The rain hammered down on the cracked asphalt of Route 17 like a relentless accusation, turning the desolate stretch into a river of regret. It was just past midnight when the old pickup truck swerved into the wrong lane, its headlights slicing through the storm like desperate pleas. Inside, Emily Harper gripped the wheel, her knuckles white against the worn leather, her mind miles away, back to the dusty roads of her childhood, where promises were whispered under starlit skies and broken by the first light of dawn. She was a paramedic on her way home from a grueling shift at Mercy General, the kind of night where lives hung by threads too thin to see, but fate, that cruel director, had other scenes in mind. Ahead, the thunder cracked open the sky, and there they were, a convoy of motorcycles roaring through the downpour, engines growling like wounded beasts. 20 riders strong, leather-clad shadows cutting through the mist, led by Jacob Kane, a man whose scars told stories no one dared ask about. They were the Iron Vows, a brotherhood forged in the fires of forgotten wars and unbreakable oaths, riding for a charity run that had stretched too far into the night. Jacob's bike led the pack, his broad shoulders hunched against the wind, the silver promise ring on his finger glinting faintly, a relic from a battlefield vow to protect his own, no matter the cost. It happened in a blur, the kind that etches itself into memory like a slow-motion reel. A deer bolted from the tree line, eyes wide with panic, forcing the pickup to fishtail. Emily slammed on the brakes, but the slick road betrayed her, sending the truck spinning toward the convoy. The first bike clipped the fender, its rider, Tommy, a wiry veteran with tattoos mapping his losses, tumbling into the ditch with a sickening crunch. Chaos erupted, bikes weaving, horns blaring, the storm swallowing screams. Jacob yanked his handlebars, avoiding the wreck by inches, but 3 more riders went down in the tangle, their machines skidding across the wet blacktop in showers of sparks. Emily's truck ground to a halt against a guardrail, steam hissing from the hood like a dying breath. Her heart pounded, years of training kicking in before fear could. She burst from the cab, rain soaking her uniform instantly, the chill biting into her skin like judgment. "Stay with me," she shouted to Tommy, who lay crumpled, blood mixing with mud on his face, his chest rising in shallow gasps. The other fallen riders groaned, one clutching a twisted leg, another dazed against his toppled Harley. The convoy halted in a semicircle, engines idling low, the air thick with the acrid scent of burnt rubber and fear-swept adrenaline. Jacob dismounted first, his boots splashing through puddles as he rushed to his brothers. At 42, he was a wall of quiet strength, his face weathered by sun and sorrow, eyes like storm clouds holding back thunder. He'd seen too many falls on desert sands and city streets, but this was different. No enemy fire, just senseless chance. "Medic!" someone yelled. But it was Emily who was already there, kneeling beside Tommy, her hands steady as she assessed the damage. "Possible concussion, broken ribs, don't move him yet." Her voice cut through the rain, calm and commanding, the poise of someone who'd pulled souls back from the edge more times than she could count. She worked methodically, directing the able-bodied riders to form a makeshift barrier with their bikes, shielding the scene from the road. To the one with the leg injury, a young recruit named Ryan, she applied pressure to staunch the bleeding, her fingers slick but sure. "Breathe slow, kid. Help's coming." Jacob watched, transfixed, as she radioed for an ambulance from her truck's dash, her words precise, bridging the gap between panic and protocol. In minutes she'd stabilized 2, easing the third into a recovery position, all while the storm raged on, lightning illuminating her determined face like a spotlight on a stage of survival. By the time sirens wailed in the distance, the worst was contained. Tommy stirred, mumbling thanks through gritted teeth, and Ryan managed a weak nod. Jacob approached her as she wiped rain from her eyes, her scrubs torn and muddied. "You just saved my crew," he said, voice gravelly over the downpour, extending a hand scarred from old grips. Emily took it, her grip firm despite the exhaustion etching lines around her eyes. "Just doing my job," she replied, but there was a weight in her words, an echo of promises she'd made to herself after losing her brother to a similar wreck years ago, the vow to never let the road claim another without a fight. As the ambulances arrived, lights pulsing red and blue against the night, Jacob pulled her aside. The other riders gathered, their leather vests dripping, forming a silent circle of gratitude. "That wasn't just a job," he said, his gaze locking onto hers. "You didn't hesitate. In our world, that's rarer than loyalty." Emily shrugged, the rain masking the tears of relief she wouldn't admit. But Jacob saw it, the flicker of doubt in her eyes, the weariness of a woman who'd given everything to a system that chewed her up. "What's your name?" he asked. Emily Harper. "Jacob Kane, and these are my brothers." He gestured to the group, their faces a mosaic of respect. In that moment, amid the flashing lights and fading thunder, a new promise sparked, not spoken, but felt in the marrow. Jacob had lost too many to chance. Emily had buried too many to indifference. What started as a collision would bind them, a thread of honor weaving through the chaos, pulling her from the shadows of her past into a light she never expected. The ambulances pulled away, carrying the injured to safety, but the convoy didn't scatter. Jacob climbed back on his bike, revving the engine once, a salute. "We'll ride with you to the hospital," he told her, nodding toward her truck. Emily hesitated, then nodded, sliding into the driver's seat. As they rolled out together, the rain easing to a misty veil, the road ahead gleamed with possibility. Little did she know, this night would rewrite her story, turning a lone paramedic into the heart of a family forged in steel and sacrifice. But dawn was still hours away, and shadows lingered. Emily's radio crackled with a dispatch from the station, rumors of budget cuts, her shifts on the line, professional. They'd question her methods, her unorthodox saves. Jacob, glancing in his mirror at her truck trailing the pack, clenched his jaw. If they doubted her, he'd make them see. A leader's word was bond, and he'd already sworn it in the storm's roar. The convoy thrummed onward, engines harmonizing with the night's quiet resolve, carrying them toward a horizon where promises, once broken, could be mended. The first rays of dawn crept over the horizon like hesitant fingers, painting the hospital parking lot in hues of bruised purple and gold. Mercy General loomed against the skyline, its white walls a sterile fortress that had seen too many battles lost to bureaucracy. Emily Harper pulled her battered truck into the emergency bay, the engine coughing its last as the convoy of motorcycles fanned out behind her, their chrome accents catching the light like badges of defiance. The rain had surrendered to a crisp morning chill, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and exhaust, a reminder that the night's fury hadn't fully dissipated. Jacob Kane killed his engine first, the silence amplifying the low murmurs from the riders as they dismounted. His leather jacket creaked with the motion, heavy with the weight of unspoken oaths. He'd ridden through worse storms, sand-swept dunes in distant lands where brothers fell not to deer, but to hidden threats. But this felt personal, a collision of worlds that demanded reckoning. Tommy and Ryan had been whisked inside already, stretchers rolling past, swinging doors under the watchful eyes of nurses who moved like ghosts in scrubs. Emily emerged from her truck, her face pale but composed, the adrenaline crash etching faint shadows under her eyes. She'd changed into spare clothes from her kit, faded jeans and a simple hoodie, but the mud-streaked paramedic badge pinned to her collar told the tale of the night. "Ms. Harper," a stern voice cut through the air from the entrance. Dr. Harlan, the shift supervisor, strode out, clipboard in hand, his wire-rimmed glasses fogging slightly in the cool air. He was a man of protocols, his tie knotted like a noose around rigid rules, and his gaze swept over the assembled bikers with thinly veiled disdain. "We got your report on the radio." Unorthodox approach, stabilizing on site without full clearance. And now this. Circus? He gestured vaguely at the group, where 20 pairs of eyes turned toward him, unyielding. Emily straightened, the chill wind tugging at her hair. "Doctor, those men were critical. Concussion risks, internal bleeding potential. I couldn't wait for transport. They're stable because of it." Her voice held steady, but inside, the familiar knot tightened. She'd heard the whispers before. Too impulsive, too attached. After her brother's accident, she'd poured her soul into the job, vowing to fight for every second, but the system saw heart as liability. The hospital's budget woes loomed like storm clouds, and saves like this, they invited questions, audits, the slow erosion of her position. Jacob stepped forward, his boots thudding softly on the pavement, positioning himself at her side like a sentinel. The riders shifted subtly, forming a loose arc, their presence a quiet thunder. "She saved lives out there," he said, his tone low and even, carrying the gravel of desert winds. "My brothers would have bled out in that ditch without her." "You call that unprofessional?" Dr. Harlan's eyes narrowed, flicking to the iron vows patches on their vests, symbols of a world he dismissed as reckless. But Jacob's stare held no threat, only the unshakable truth of a man who'd buried friends and kept their promises alive. Inside the ER, the scene unfolded in controlled chaos, beeps of monitors syncing with the rhythm of hurried footsteps, the sharp tang of antiseptic mingling with coffee from the nurse's station. Emily followed the doctor through the double doors, Jacob and a few riders trailing until a security guard waved them back. Tommy lay in Bay 3, an IV dripping steadily, his face bandaged, but his grin faint as Emily checked his chart. "You're a miracle, lady," he rasped, squeezing her hand. Ryan, in the next bed, nodded from his elevated leg, the pain meds dulling the edges but not the gratitude. "Didn't think I'd walk again after that spin." But the praise soured quickly. Dr. Harlan pulled her into a side office, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like judgmental insects. "Your methods bypassed protocol," he said, flipping through pages. "No logged assist from dispatch and riding with. Civilians, the board's reviewing your file. Rumors of cuts. We can't afford risks." Emily's jaw tightened, the words landing like blows. She'd given everything, nights without sleep, holidays traded for shifts, yet here she was, defending her soul against spreadsheets. Flashes of her brother's empty hospital bed surfaced, the promise she'd made at his grave, to never turn away. But what if the job turned from her first? Words spread through the halls like smoke. Nurses whispered in clusters, some nodding supportively at Emily, others eyeing the clock. Outside, Jacob paced the waiting area, his calloused hands flexing as he overheard snippets from a passing orderly. "They're sidelining her, after what she did." One of his riders, a burly veteran named Lucas, clapped his shoulder. "Boss, we owe her. The vows don't forget." Jacob's mind raced back to his own scars, not just the physical ones snaking up his arm from a long-ago explosion, but the deeper ones, the guilt of leaving a squad behind in the chaos of war. He'd formed the iron vows to honor that, a family bound by choice, not blood. Emily's resolve mirrored his own, a quiet fire against the indifferent grind. By mid-morning, the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the lot, where the bikes waited like loyal hounds. Emily emerged from the office, her steps measured, Dr. Harlan's warning echoing, suspension pending review. She found Jacob leaning against his Harley, arms crossed, the promise ring catching the light. "They're questioning everything," she admitted, leaning against the truck, the metal warm now under her palm. "Say I'm not cut out. Too emotional, they call it." Jacob pushed off the bike, closing the distance without crowding her space. "Emotional? That's what kept my men breathing. In my world, that's the only professional that matters." He paused, the air between them thick with unspoken understanding. "You got family here. Ties holding you?" She shook her head, a sad smile ghosting her lips. "Just the job. Lost my brother on a road like that. Promised myself I'd make a difference." The confession hung there, raw and real, bridging the gap between paramedic and outlaw. "Then let us return the ride." Jacob's eyes, deep with the weight of oaths kept, met hers. "Heard you mention a lead on another spot, some clinic upstate, right? Word from a nurse friend?" Emily blinked, surprised. She'd let that slip to a rider earlier. The new place, Hope Ridge Medical, was smaller, underfunded but free of the red tape choking Mercy. A fresh start if she could get there. Before she could respond, engines rumbled to life behind him. The full convoy, now 25 strong, word having spread through texts and calls, idled in formation, a steel river ready to flow. "We escort you," Jacob said simply, mounting his bike. "No questions, no strings, just honor." Emily hesitated, the institutional chains of her old life clashing with this wild offer of solidarity. But in their eyes, she saw her brother's smile. The family she'd lost, reborn in leather and loyalty. She climbed into her truck, key turning with a resolve that chased away the dawn's chill. As the convoy pulled out, leading her onto the open road, the wind whipped through open windows, carrying whispers of redemption. Mercy General shrank in the rear view, a chapter closing amid the roar of engines, a symphony of chosen bonds, where one woman's doubt met a brotherhood's unyielding promise. The miles ahead stretched like veins of possibility, pulsing with the heartbeat of justice earned, not given. Yet beneath the unity, shadows stirred. Whispers from the hospital reached unlikely ears. A rival crew, hearing of the vow's debt, saw opportunity in the chaos. Jacob's instincts prickled as they crested a hill. But for now, the road was clear, and Emily rode toward a horizon where her worth wouldn't be measured in forms, but in the lives she'd touched. The engine's hum vowed it. This escort was just the beginning. The sun hung high over the winding blacktop of Highway 42, its rays baking the asphalt into a shimmering mirage that danced like elusive dreams. Emily Harper's truck hummed steadily in the center of the convoy, flanked by the Iron Vow's motorcycles, a protective phalanx of chrome and leather cutting through the midday haze. The air rushing through her cracked window carried the sharp tang of pine from the bordering woods, mingling with the faint, oily scent of engines that had become a strangely comforting rhythm. She'd left Mercy General behind hours ago, but the sting of Dr. Harlan's words lingered like a bruise, questioning not just her skills, but her very place in a world that prized procedure over pulse. Jacob Kane rode point, his Harley a steady arrowhead leading the pack, the wind tugging at his salt and pepper hair beneath the helmet. At his side, Lucas thundered along, the burly veteran's presence a silent vow of vigilance, his eyes scanning the horizon for threats real or imagined. Behind Emily, Tommy and Ryan had insisted on joining despite their bandages. Tommy's arm in a sling, Ryan's leg propped awkwardly on a custom rig, but their bikes were there, symbols of resilience that mirrored the woman they owed their lives to. The convoy had swelled to 30 now, riders peeling off from nearby chapters of the vows, drawn by texts rippling through the network like urgent dispatches from a forgotten front. It wasn't just an escort. It was a statement etched in the growl of exhaust and the unyielding line of their formation. As they crested a rise, the landscape opened to rolling hills dotted with wildflowers, the kind that bloomed defiant against the odds. Emily's mind wandered to the interview ahead, at Hope Ridge Medical, a modest clinic in the valley town of Eldridge, far from the city's sterile grind. Her friend Sarah, a nurse who'd jumped ship from Mercy years back, had pulled strings. "They need someone with your fire, Em. No boardroom vultures here." But doubt gnawed at her edges. What if this was just another dead end? The promise she'd made at her brother's grave felt heavier with every mile, a chain of honor that pulled her forward even as fear whispered retreat. Glancing in the side mirror, she caught Jacob's silhouette, steady and sure, and for the first time in years, the isolation cracked, a glimpse of family not by blood, but by the quiet acts that bound souls. The first ripple of trouble came at the state line checkpoint, a squat booth flanked by squad cars, their lights dormant but ominous under the relentless sun. A trooper in starched khaki stepped out, hand raised, his mirrored shades reflecting the convoy like a distorted funhouse. "Pull over, all of you!" he barked into a radio, voice tinny over the idling engines. The air thickened with tension, the scent of hot rubber sharpening as bikes slowed to a halt in a disciplined arc. Jacob killed his motor first, dismounting with deliberate calm, his boots crunching gravel as he approached, hands visible and empty, a gesture born of too many tense standoffs. Emily's heart quickened, her fingers tightening on the wheel. She knew the drill. Profiles like the vows drew scrutiny, leather and patches painting them as threats in a system blind to their code. The trooper's partner circled her truck, peering in with a flashlight despite the daylight, his gaze lingering on her paramedic badge. "Ma'am, you traveling with this group? Reports from up north, multi-vehicle incident, possible reckless endangerment." The words landed like accusations, echoing Dr. Harlan's dismissal. Emily leaned out the window, her voice level but laced with steel. "I'm heading to an interview. These men, they're friends, escorting me after I helped them last night." Jacob joined her side, his shadow falling protective across the door. "No endangerment here, officer, just good people keeping a promise." The trooper's lip curled, flipping open a notepad. "Promises don't mean much when they tie up the highway. We've got complaints. Hospital saying one of yours caused a scene." Whispers from Mercy had traveled fast, twisted into warnings of disruption, the vows cast as the villains in a tale of institutional order. Lucas edged closer, his massive frame a quiet deterrent, while Tommy muttered from his bike, "We were the ones bleeding, not causing." The standoff stretched, the sun beating down like an interrogator's lamp, sweat beading on Emily's brow. She felt the weight of eyes upon her, not just the troopers, but her escorts, a circle of loyalty testing its mettle. Memories surfaced unbidden. Her brother's last ride, the cops who'd arrived too late, their reports cold and concluding. She'd vowed then to challenge the indifferent machinery, but here it was, grinding against her anew. Jacob's hand rested lightly on the truck's frame, a subtle anchor. "She's a hero, not a hazard," he said to the trooper, his tone carrying the depth of battlefields where words had saved more than bullets. "Check the logs. 3 of us walking because of her." Tension coiled like a spring. The distant hum of traffic a mocking underscore. The lead trooper radioed in, static crackling with verification from the night's report. Minutes dragged into an eternity, the air heavy with unspoken stakes. Finally, he stepped back, shades dipping in reluctant concession. "Clear to proceed, but keep it orderly. No more spectacles." The barrier lifted with a mechanical whine, and the convoy reformed, engines roaring back to life in a unified surge that vibrated through Emily's chest. As they rolled past, Jacob shot her a nod through his visor, a silent affirmation. "We'd face worse for you." The road dipped into the valley, Hope Ridge coming into view, a cluster of low buildings nestled against forested slopes, the clinic sign weathered but welcoming. Like an old friend's embrace, Emily's pulse steadied as they pulled into the lot, bikes forming a respectful perimeter, not encircling but honoring the space. Sarah waited at the entrance, her smile breaking wide as Emily stepped out, the scent of fresh-cut grass replacing the highway's bite. "You made it," Sarah said, hugging her tight, then eyeing the riders with warm curiosity. "Brought the cavalry." Inside, the interview unfolded in a sunlit office. charts of local needs pinned to corkboards, stories of a community clinging to hope amid fading resources. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the clinic's head, listened intently as Emily recounted the night, her voice gaining strength with each detail, the vows' support weaving into her narrative like threads of unbreakable cloth. "We value heart here," Dr. Vasquez said, her eyes kind but appraising. "And from what I hear and see, you've got plenty." The offer came swiftly, a position starting next week, a chance to heal without the shadows of doubt. But as Emily emerged, the joy tempered with a new resolve, Jacob approached, wiping dust from his hands. "You did it," he said, pride etching his features. The riders clapped softly, a chorus of approval that chased away the checkpoint's chill. Yet Jacob's gaze drifted to the tree line, where a lone motorcycle idled briefly before vanishing, a shadow too deliberate to ignore, rival whispers perhaps, or old ghosts stirring. "This ride's not over," he murmured to her, "but you've got backup now. Family doesn't let go." Emily nodded, the weight lifting like morning fog, replaced by a bond forged in motion. The convoy would disperse soon, scattering to their chapters, but the promise lingered, a circle of steel and sacrifice, ready to ride when called. As engines revved for the return, the valley air hummed with possibility, a quiet victory against the cynic's tide. Redemption wasn't a destination, it was the road they shared, winding toward horizons where honor outlasted the storm. The valley air grew thicker as the afternoon sun dipped toward the jagged peaks, casting long shadows that clawed at the edges of Eldridge like forgotten regrets. Emily Harper stood in the clinic's modest parking lot, the weight of her new badge, Hope Ridge paramedic, etched in simple gold, still unfamiliar against her collar. The offer from Dr. Vasquez had come like a lifeline tossed into turbulent waters, pulling her from the undertow of mercy's judgment. But as the Iron Vow's engines idled in a loose semicircle, their chrome gleaming under the fading light, she felt the pull of something deeper, a bond that hummed with the low rumble of loyalty, echoing the promises she'd buried with her brother years ago. Jacob Kane leaned against his Harley, arms crossed over his leather vest, the Iron Vows patch catching the golden hour's glow like a medal of quiet battles won. He'd watched her emerge from the clinic doors, her steps lighter, but her eyes scanning the tree line where that lone rider had vanished earlier, a ghost on two wheels that set his instincts prickling like sand in an old wound. At 42, Jacob had learned to trust those twitches. They'd saved his squad in the haze of desert ops, where shadows hid more than mirages. "Congrats, Emily," he said, his voice a steady anchor amid the dispersing riders. Tommy clapped her shoulder gently with his good arm, grinning through the pain of his sling. "Told you, you're one of us now." Ryan nodded from his bike, his elevated leg no deterrent to the ride home. The group was thinning, chapters peeling off toward their own horizons, but Jacob lingered, his promise ring twisting absently on his finger. A talisman from a vow to never leave a brother behind, now extended to this woman who'd stitched their frayed edges. She smiled faintly, the scent of pine and exhaust mingling in her lungs. A far cry from the antiseptic bite of hospital halls. "I couldn't have gotten here without you all. That checkpoint. It felt like the road fighting back." Her words carried the raw edge of confession, the vulnerability of someone who'd armored herself against loss, only to find cracks in the steel. Jacob pushed off the bike, closing the gap with measured steps, his boots scuffing the gravel like whispers of resolve. "Roads test us, but they don't break what's true. You've got a fresh start here. Let it be that." Yet even as he spoke, his gaze flicked to the winding access road, where dust clouds hinted at distant motion. The rival crew's whispers had reached him via a quick text from Lucas, the Shadow Reapers, old adversaries from border runs, sniffing around Vow's territory. They thrived on division, preying on debts and doubts, and Emily's story, leaked from Mercy's disgruntled ranks, painted a target on her back. a disruptive element tied to outlaw escorts. As the last bikes thrummed away, leaving an echo in the valley's embrace, Jacob offered her a ride back to her truck, parked at a nearby diner for safekeeping. The short haul wound through shaded lanes, sunlight dappling the path like fleeting hopes. Emily rode pillion, her arms tentative around his waist at first, then steadying as the wind tugged at her hair, a sensation of freedom laced with the faint tremor of uncertainty. "Why do this?" she asked over the engine's growl, her breath warm against his shoulder. "You don't even know me." Jacob's response came measured, the road's curve mirroring the bend in his thoughts. "Knew enough last night. You didn't flinch when the world spun out. That's the kind of honor that binds us, vows or not." He thought of his own ghosts, the explosion that scarred his arm, the faces lost in the smoke, the oath sworn over dog tags to protect what remained. Emily's fire reminded him of that, a spark against the dark. They reached the diner as dusk settled, the neon sign flickering to life like a hesitant beacon, casting red hues across the lot. Her truck sat untouched, but Jacob's eyes narrowed at fresh tire tracks in the dirt, too wide for locals, too deliberate. "Stay close," he murmured, dismounting and scanning the perimeter, the air cooling with the promise of night. Emily nodded, her paramedic instincts sharpening. She'd seen enough scenes to recognize the hush before unrest. Inside the diner, over black coffee steaming in chipped mugs, they pieced together the threads. Sarah had texted, rumors swirling at Hope Ridge already, Mercy contacts bad-mouthing her reckless associations, then painting the vows as a liability that could drag the underfunded clinic into audits. "They're trying to bury me before I start," Emily said, her fingers tracing the mug's rim, the ceramic warm against her skin. The weight of it all pressed in, the brother's grave, the endless shifts, now this shadow of sabotage. Jacob's jaw set, the lines of his face hardening like forged metal. "Not on our watch. The Reapers might be stirring, thinking they can exploit the noise, but debts like yours, we repay in full." He pulled out his phone, firing off coordinates to the remaining riders, a call to arms veiled in code, summoning a tighter circle for the nights ahead. As they stepped out, stars pricking the velvet sky, two sets of headlights pierced the gloom from the highway. Lucas and a scout, rolling in like reinforcements from a silent war. The air hummed with anticipation, the scent of cooling engines blending with the night's dew-kissed earth. Emily slid into her truck, key turning with a resolve that chased the chill. "Thank you, Jacob, for seeing me, really seeing." He mounted his bike, the headlight beam cutting the dark like a vow etched in light. "Family chosen doesn't fade. Ride safe. We'll shadow till you're settled." As her taillights faded down the valley road, the trio of bikes fell in behind at a distance, guardians in the gloom. But the tracks they'd spotted earlier led to a pull-off, where a discarded cigarette butt marked with the Reaper's subtle insignia lay smouldering in the dirt. Jacob pocketed it, his mind mapping the threats, not just institutional thorns, but a brewing storm of rivalry that could test the vow's iron core. Miles away, in a dimly lit roadhouse on the county line, the Shadow Reapers gathered around scarred tables, the acrid smoke of cigars curling like conspiracies. Their leader, a gaunt figure named Victor Slade, nursed a whiskey, his eyes gleaming with opportunistic fire. Word of the vow's soft spot for the paramedic had spread through back channels, Mercy's leaks fueling their grudge from a territory skirmish years back. "She's their weakness," Victor rasped, slamming a fist that rattled glasses. "Hit her new gig. Make 'em bleed loyalty." Laughter rippled, low and venomous, but beneath it the code of the road twisted. Justice perverted into vendetta, honor bartered for power. Back in Eldridge, Emily pulled into her small apartment, the building's porch light a lone sentinel against the encroaching woods. She locked the door, heart steady but alert, the day's victories tempered by the night's unknowns. Unpacking her kit, she found a small token slipped in during the ride. a vow's keychain, simple leather and steel, engraved with "Bound by the Ride." Tears pricked her eyes, not of sorrow, but release, the promise of her past merging with this new family, a circle wide enough to hold her scars. Outside, Jacob's convoy circled the perimeter once, engines a muffled symphony of protection, before vanishing into the dark. The road whispered of trials to come, corruption's grasp tightening, rivals closing in, but in that fragile peace, redemption took root. Emily's light burned brighter, a beacon for the lost, drawing the vows into her orbit. The night deepened, stars witnessing oaths renewed as the wheel of fate turned toward confrontation, where loyalty would clash with deceit in a symphony of steel and unyielding heart. If this chapter's tale of quiet strength and unbreakable bonds is stirring something in you, take a moment to hit that like button. It helps spread these stories of honor to more roads and hearts. The moon hung low over Eldridge like a silver medallion, its pale light filtering through the canopy of ancient oaks that flanked the narrow streets. Emily Harper's apartment was a modest sanctuary on the town's edge, its wooden floors creaking underfoot as she moved through the dim living room, the faint glow of a single lamp casting elongated shadows across unpacked boxes. The air inside carried the comforting aroma of chamomile tea steeping in a chipped mug, a ritual to steady nerves frayed by the day's triumphs and the night's lurking unease. She'd hung her new badge on the wall beside a faded photo of her brother, his smile frozen in time, a silent witness to the promises that had carried her this far. But sleep evaded her, the distant hum of a motorcycle echoing like a heartbeat in the quiet. Outside, the valley breathed with nocturnal life, crickets chirping in rhythmic defiance, the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by a cool breeze laced with the earthy scent of impending rain. Jacob Kane idled his Harley at the street's end, engine silenced to a whisper, his silhouette blending with the deeper blacks of the tree line. He'd posted Lucas and two others in rotating watch, a loose perimeter that felt more like a vow than vigilance, iron threads weaving protection around the woman who'd mended their own. The keychain he'd slipped into her kit earlier was a small gesture, but in the vows code, it bound her as kin, a talisman against the shadows closing in. Jacob's mind replayed the diner's tire tracks, the reaper's marked butt, old grudges resurfacing, twisted by Mercy's poisoned whispers into a blade aimed at her fresh start. Miles away, in the bowels of a roadside bar on the county's ragged fringe, the shadow reapers coiled like vipers in the dim haze of neon and smoke. The establishment reeked of stale beer and regret, its scarred pool table a battlefield for petty conquests under flickering bulbs that buzzed like trapped anger. Victor Slade paced the worn planks, his lean frame taut with predatory intent, a jagged scar tracing his jaw from a long-ago clash with the vows over border runs. He'd built his crew on opportunism, promises traded like counterfeit coins, loyalty bought with fear rather than forged in fire. Tonight the air thrummed with their low murmurs, glasses clinking as they plotted around a crumpled map marked with Eldridge's veins. "The paramedics the key," Victor hissed, his voice a serrated edge slicing the tension. "Mercy's feeding us dirt, says she's unstable, tied to Kane's circus. We hit the clinic tomorrow, make it look like her mess, draw the vows out, bleed 'em dry." One of his lieutenants, a stocky brute named Derek, nodded, cracking his knuckles with a sound like snapping twigs. They'd already seeded doubt, anonymous tips to local authorities, painting Hope Ridge as a haven for outlaw sympathizers, the kind of institutional rot that could shutter doors before they fully opened. Victor's eyes gleamed with the thrill of it, justice perverted into payback, honor bartered for territory. He'd lost riders to Jacob's unyielding code years back, a debt unpaid in his twisted ledger. As thunder rumbled in the distance, promising a storm to mask their moves. The Reapers mounted up, engines snarling to life in a discordant chorus, tires kicking gravel as they slithered toward the valley. Dawn broke with a hesitant blush, painting the clinic's facade in soft pinks and golds, the morning mist clinging to the grass like veils of uncertainty. Emily arrived early, her truck's tires crunching over dew-slicked gravel, the engine's warmth chasing the night's chill from her bones. Hope Ridge buzzed with quiet purpose, patients filtering in for routine checks, the scent of fresh coffee wafting from the break room, mingling with the clean sharpness of medical supplies. "Doctor," Vasquez greeted her at the door, her handshake firm and welcoming, eyes reflecting the trust Emily had earned in yesterday's interview. "First shift, let's make it count," she said, guiding her to the supply room where kits waited, organized with the simplicity of a place unburdened by excess. For the first time in years, Emily felt the promise of her brother's vow ignite without the drag of doubt, a space to heal, to honor the lives she'd sworn to safeguard. But the morning's rhythm shattered before noon. Alarms blared from the dispatch radio, a frantic call crackling through. Multi-vehicle pile-up on the valley's twisty bypass, victims trapped amid twisted metal and spilling fuel. Emily grabbed her gear, heart surging with the familiar adrenaline, sliding into the ambulance with Sarah at her side. "This one's bad," Sarah murmured, the siren's wail slicing the air as they raced out, lights pulsing like urgent heartbeats against the sun-dappled road. The scene unfolded in horrific clarity, a semi overturned, cars accordioned behind it, steam hissing from ruptured hoods, the acrid bite of gasoline heavy in the air. Bystanders hovered at the edges, faces pale with shock, while first responders cordoned the chaos. Emily dove in, her training a seamless dance, assessing a driver pinned by the dash, his breaths ragged, blood tracing faint lines down his temple, directing Sarah to stabilize a child pulled from the wreckage, her small form trembling but unbroken. The work was visceral, hands slick with effort, voices cutting through the din with commands born of necessity. Yet, amid the frenzy, a figure caught her eye. Derek, the Reaper lieutenant, lingering too long at the periphery, his leather vest half hidden under a jacket, phone pressed to his ear, as if coordinating rather than aiding. Suspicion flickered, but duty pulled her back. Another victim, leg mangled beneath debris, requiring focus that blurred the edges of unease. Word reached Jacob via a scout's urgent text as he led a morning ride through the hills, the convoy's engines a steady thrum against the rising heat. The pilot's location screamed setup, too close to Eldridge, too timed with the Reaper's grudge. He veered the group toward the bypass, wind whipping through his vest, the promise ring a cool weight against his skin. Arriving, he dismounted into the haze, boots sinking into oil-slicked earth, his presence drawing eyes from the vows, already on scene. Tommy and Ryan, bandaged but unbowed, helping direct traffic. "Emily's in the thick of it," Tommy said, nodding to the ambulance where she knelt beside a stretcher, her face streaked with grime but resolute. Jacob approached as the last victim was loaded, his shadow falling across her as she wiped her hands on a rag, the fabric darkening with the day's toll. "You good?" he asked, voice low amid the fading sirens, the air still thick with exhaust and relief. Emily looked up, surprise softening her exhaustion, then hardening as she glanced toward Derek's retreating form on a bike that blended into the dispersing crowd. Something's off. That guy, he wasn't helping. He was watching. Jacob's jaw tightened, piecing the shadows. Reapers staging the wreck to overwhelm the clinic, to frame her response as inadequate, fueling the sabotage from mercy. They're testing us, but we don't break. As cleanup crews swarmed, Lucas pulled up with reinforcements, their bikes forming a barrier that warded off prying eyes. Emily stood shoulder to shoulder with Jacob, the valley's breeze carrying whispers of solidarity, the scent of pine underscoring the unspoken oath. Dr. Vasquez radioed in support from Hope Ridge, her voice steady. "You've got this, Harper. We're behind you." But the real threat loomed in the radio chatter. Incoming investigators from the state tipped off about protocol lapses in the response. Echoes of Mercy's venom designed to unravel her new roots. By afternoon, the sun beat down mercilessly, turning the bypass into a furnace of drying asphalt and lingering tension. Emily returned to the clinic, her report meticulous, but doubt crept in like cooling shadows. Had the reapers timed it to expose her? Jacob lingered in the lot, coordinating with his riders via hushed calls, the vows network a web of loyalty stretching across counties. "This ends tonight," he told her through the open ambulance door, his eyes holding the depth of battles past. "We confront Victor, clear the air on our terms, no blood, just truth." Emily nodded, the weight of chosen family settling like armor, her brother's promise echoing in the resolve: stand firm, protect the vulnerable. As dusk bled into the sky, painting the peaks in fiery oranges, the pieces aligned for reckoning. Emily locked the clinic, the keys click a punctuation to the day's trials. While Jacob's convoy reformed in the distance, a steel tide ready to wash away deceit. The road ahead twisted with ethical thorns, loyalty's fire clashing against corruption's chill grasp. In the heart of it, redemption burned bright, a beacon forged from one woman's unyielding heart and a brotherhood's eternal ride. Shadows gathered, but the vows held, pulling them toward a dawn where honor would claim its due. The night air in Eldridge thickened with the scent of damp earth and distant thunder, as if the valley itself held its breath against the gathering storm. Emily Harper stepped out of the clinic's back door, the metal frame groaning softly in the wind, her keys jangling like a final warning, the day's chaos, the pile-up's twisted wreckage. The acrid bite of fuel still clinging to her skin faded into the encroaching dusk, but the undercurrent of threat pulsed, stronger now, a low vibration mirroring the idling engines hidden in the tree line. She'd radioed Jacob from inside, her voice steady over the static. "They're coming, I can feel it." Hope Ridge stood quiet behind her, its windows dark, save for the faint glow of the nurses' station where Sarah kept watch, a steadfast ally in the web of chosen bonds. Jacob Kane's convoy emerged from the shadows like spectres forged in steel, headlights slicing the gloom in precise beams that avoided blinding but announced their presence. 30 strong now, the iron vows formed a deliberate arc around the clinic's perimeter, her bikes positioned not as aggressors but as a living shield. Engines rumbling low, the collective growl a symphony of restrained power. Jacob dismounted first, his boots sinking into the soft grass, the leather of his vest creaking as he approached Emily. His face, etched by firelight from a nearby lantern, held the quiet intensity of a man who'd stared down worse than vendettas. The desert's unforgiving sands, where promises were the only map worth following. "Victor's playing dirty," he said, his breath visible in the cooling air, "but truth cuts deeper than any blade. We meet them on neutral ground, the old crossroads bridge. No guns, no games, just words and the weight they carry." Emily nodded, the wind tugging at her hoodie, carrying whispers of pine and impending rain that mirrored the storm in her chest. The Reaper's sabotage had escalated. The pile-up wasn't accident, but orchestration, Derek's watchful eyes confirming it, designed to overwhelm her first shift and paint Hope Ridge as negligent. Mercy's leaks had fueled the fire, anonymous reports flooding state lines with tales of her unstable methods, threatening audits that could shutter the clinic before it truly opened. But in Jacob's gaze, she saw her reflection. Not the doubted paramedic, but the woman who'd pulled lives from the brink, honoring a brother's grave with every steady hand. "I'm with you," she replied, her voice threading through the night like a vow renewed. Tommy and Ryan flanked them, their injuries mere badges now. Slings and braces no match for the loyalty burning in their eyes. The crossroads bridge spanned a shallow creek, its iron rails rusted from years of relentless weather, moonlight glinting off the water below like scattered promises. The reapers arrived first. A ragged line of 15 bikes growling to a halt, Victor Slade at the fore, his gaunt frame silhouetted against the dark flow, Scar twisting his smirk into something feral. The air hung heavy with the tang of exhaust and tension, thunder rumbling closer, a cosmic underscore to the standoff. Derek loomed at his side, arms crossed, the insignia on his vest, a mocking echo of the vow's own. "Kane," Victor called, his voice slicing the quiet like gravel under tires. "You and your pet medic stirring up my territory. Mercy's word is gold. She says the woman's a liability, dragging good folks down. Time to cut ties before the law does it for you." Jacob stepped forward, Emily at his shoulder, the group fanning out behind them in a wall of unyielding presence. The creek's murmur provided a steady rhythm, water lapping against stones worn smooth by time, much like the oaths that had weathered their scars. "Your territory? This is about honor, Victor, not lines on a map. Emily saved my brothers when the road tried to take them. You twist whispers from a corrupt house to justify your grudge? That's not brotherhood. That's cowardice." His words landed with the weight of desert winds, evoking memories of lost comrades, the explosion's flash that had seared his arm and soul. The vows shifted subtly. Lucas's massive form, a quiet deterrent, but no hands reached for weapons. This was a battle of moral steel, justice poetic in its restraint. Victor's laugh barked out, hollow against the bridge's echo, but doubt flickered in his eyes, shadows dancing across his face from the bike's dim lights. Emily spoke then, her tone calm amid the rising wind, the first raindrops pattering like hesitant confessions. "I know your game, the wreck today, staged to break me, to make Hope Ridge look weak. But I've buried enough to know indifference kills slower than any crash. Mercy's poison won't touch here. We heal, we protect, not sabotage for old scores." Her words bridged the divide, a paramedic's precision cutting through the venom, reminding them all of the human cost, families shattered, promises unkept. Derek shifted uneasily, the lieutenant's murmuring, the reaper's cohesion cracking under the glare of truth. Thunder cracked overhead, rain sheeting down in sudden fury, turning the bridge slick and the air alive with ozone's sharp bite. Victor advanced a step, rain streaming down his face, washing away the smirk. "You think words end this? The law's coming? Tips about your escorts and clinic ties to outlaws?" But Jacob met him halfway, the downpour masking the tremor of restrained thunder in his voice. "Let them come. We've got records. The night she saved us, the lives pulled from that ditch. You're set up? Witnesses saw Derek idling, not aiding. Choose now, ride away with your pride, or let this grudge bury you." The standoff hung, rain hammering the rails like judgment, until Victor's shoulders slumped, the weight of his crew's uneasy glances pressing in. He'd built on fear, but faced with unyielding integrity, it crumbled. With a curse swallowed by the storm, Victor signaled retreat, the Reaper's engines roaring to life in a defeated chorus. Tires spraying water as they peeled into the night. The bridge emptied, leaving only the vows and the cleansing rain, its rhythm easing to a steady patter that washed the tension from the air. Emily turned to Jacob, water dripping from her hair, a smile breaking through the chill. Raw, real, born of trials shared. "It's over," she whispered, the creek's song affirming it. He clasped her shoulder. The gesture brotherly, the promise ring glinting through the wet. "Not over, just begun. Hope Ridge stands because of you, and we've got your back, always." Back at the clinic, the storm passed into a starlit calm, the valley exhaling as if relieved. Dr. Vasquez met them at the door, radio in hand, state investigators deterred by verified logs, Mercy's sabotage exposed in the light of day. Emily's position solidified, not by force, but by the quiet power of bonds unbroken. As the vows dispersed into the dispersing clouds, engines fading like echoes of resolve, Jacob lingered one last moment. "Family rides together," he said, mounting his bike. Emily watched them go, the road gleaming wet under moonlight. Her heart full with the legacy of sacrifice and honor, a chosen circle where redemption wasn't earned alone, but shared in the roar of the ride. Dawn painted the horizon in soft golds, the air fresh with petrichor, as Emily began her true first shift. The clinic hummed with purpose, patients greeted by her steady hands, the shadows of doubt banished by loyalty's enduring light. In the distance, a single bike engine purred, a scout's watchful pass, a vow eternal. The road ahead stretched infinite, woven with promises that outlasted storms, where justice moral triumphed, and hearts found their home in the unyielding embrace of family chosen. Thank you for riding along on this journey of unbreakable vows and quiet courage. If these tales of redemption and loyalty touch your soul, please subscribe for more stories that honor the road less traveled. We'd love to have you in our convoy.